So what happens when a top government official claims total exoneration, but the official report says he actually put national security at risk? Well, that is the big question at the heart of the Signalgate scandal with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He's saying case closed, but the Pentagon's own investigation, it paints a much, much murkier picture. Let's really break down what happened here. First things first, let's just look at the two completely different stories that came out of this. You've got Hegseth's version of events, and then you have what the Pentagon's own investigators had to say. And here it is, right from the secretary himself on social media. It's a victory lap. The message is simple, it's clear, and it's designed to just shut this whole thing down. No classified info, total exoneration, case closed. Done. But then, you read the official conclusion from the Pentagon's Inspector General. And it doesn't say he was innocent. Not at all. It says his actions put defense personnel and their missions at risk. I mean, that's a completely different reality, right? And when you put them side by side like this, the disconnect is just, wow. It's crystal clear. Hegseth says total exoneration, but the report says he broke protocol using his personal phone. He says no classified info, but the report confirms he shared stuff from a secret document. He says case is closed, but the investigators are recommending more training for everybody. So how on earth can both of these things be true? To get that, we have to go back to how this whole mess started. The whole scandal, which the press quickly called Signalgate, really kicked off with a massive security breach. All because of one single mistaken tap on a screen.
It's really a story for our times, you know? High-level officials using a commercial app, Signal, to talk about secret military strikes with one person in that group chat who was absolutely not supposed to be there.
And just look at how fast this all went down. March 11th, a journalist gets added by mistake. Just 4 days later, he's reading the exact details for an upcoming airstrike. And then, by March 24th, that's less than 2 weeks after the initial slip-up, the story is all over the news and Washington is in an absolute uproar. And let's be really clear here, this wasn't some low-level staff group chat. We're talking about the Secretary of Defense, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and the Director of National Intelligence. I mean, these are the heavy hitters, the people at the very, very top.
Okay, so after the leak and all the public outrage, the Pentagon's Inspector General gets involved. They launch a full investigation. So what did they actually find? Well, let's just say it was a lot more complicated than the total exoneration Hegseth was talking about.
The findings are nuanced, to say the least. The violations are pretty cut and dry. He used an unauthorized app, shared strike details with his family, and didn't save the messages. But it all comes down to this big gray area you see in the last column. As the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth has the authority to declassify information pretty much whenever he wants. The huge question the investigators could never answer was, did he actually declassify this stuff before he hit send? And we need to be clear about just how sensitive this material was. The info was from a document stamped secret/NOFORN. That NOFORN part means no foreign nationals. This is a very high level of classification. It is explicitly meant to be kept away from anyone who isn't a U.S. national. And here it was, being discussed on a commercial messaging app. The second this nuanced report hit the streets, Washington did exactly what Washington does best. It split right down the middle into two fiercely opposed camps, and each one had its own story to tell. So on one side, you have Hegseth's defenders. The president called it a witch hunt. A spokesperson claimed total exoneration, and their big argument was, hey, the mission was a success, so no harm, no foul. But on the other side, you had critics like Senator Chuck Schumer calling it a stunning breach, with others saying that any other government employee would have been fired on the spot for doing this. And that quote there from Senator Mark Warner really cuts to the core of what the critics are arguing, that this whole Signalgate thing, it isn't just a one-time screw-up. They say it's part of a much bigger pattern. Yeah, this idea of a pattern is absolutely central to understanding the political fallout. For Hegseth's critics, Signalgate wasn't some random accident. It was just the latest chapter in a long story of controversial actions. So that's the real question that his critics keep asking. Was this just a one-off mistake, or does it tell us something bigger about his whole leadership style? You see, the Signal scandal doesn't exist in a vacuum. It sits right alongside a whole bunch of other serious investigations and allegations. Things like giving a very controversial order during that Caribbean boat strike, accusations of financial mismanagement and excessive drinking at a previous job, and a sexual assault allegation that was ultimately settled out of court. And just think about that Caribbean boat strike for a second. This number, 80, that's the number of people reported killed in those operations. These are the same strikes that the UN has criticized as potential extrajudicial killings. This is the kind of heavy context that critics point to when they start talking about a pattern of recklessness. So at the end of the day, this whole affair leaves us with this huge, fundamental question that goes way beyond Pete Hegseth or the Signal app. When a leader has the power to single-handedly declassify the country's biggest secrets, what do security protocols even mean anymore? And in a world of instant messages and disappearing chats, how can we ever really enforce accountability?